Blessings, good evening. Welcome to our New Year's Eve program for those of you who arrived this evening. As well as being the last day of the year, it's also the last day of our retreat. We've been having a retreat here for 6 days. So as part of tonight's program we have a Q&A session, and there's still a few questions waiting to be answered. So hopefully the questions and the answers can be of use to you. So the first question tonight is, Dear Ajahn, what happens to the body physiologically during samadhi? I've noticed the sense of the body disappears. It expands, no more boundaries around. Would the function of the organs slow down? Maybe. Because you notice when you're peaceful, say you're practicing breath meditation and you become concentrated on the breath becomes very refined, slower than before, more subtle, more refined than before. Sometimes it seems to stop altogether. What stopped is the movement in and out of the breath, because your body and mind have become so still as you've focused your mind on the breath, that both body and mind have calmed right down. So that is I guess you'd call it a physiological change. The number of breaths in and out per minute slows right down, and then eventually you can't even feel the movement. And that often brings up doubt or even fear. You say, oh, am I going to die? One person thought they were just going to kind of lift off and disappear and never come back. But no, that's not what's happening. It's simply the body is so still, you can't really feel it in the normal way. The senses of the body have gone quiet. But you're still breathing because you can breathe through your skin. If you were to cover yourself, it's happened before, I don't know if you know, people have covered themselves in body paint. In the old days, the body paints people used was greasy and very thick. And if you completely cover your whole body, all your skin in body paint, you can die. You can't breathe anymore because you breathe through your skin as well as your lungs and your nose. So if they cover you in body paint, they usually leave a square where there's still some unpainted skin. Or in the old days, that's what they did. So when the movement of the breath stops, you're in samadhi, you're still there breathing, otherwise you'd be dead. But you're breathing through the skin, and you're not experiencing the movement of the lungs. The expansion, the contraction stops. So that affects your mind and body, obviously. And there's a lot of very good, positive energy released mentally and physically. So it has a very healing effect on the body when you enter a deep state of samadhi. So our teacher Ajahn Chah did this regularly. He'd enter a state, what we call jhana, and probably fourth jhana, because he's very skilled in his samadhi. And this going into jhana from time to time would have a great refreshing and healing effect on his body, which helped him live for the last 10 years of his life. He was very ill. And the doctors suggested he probably wouldn't last very long once he became ill. He had a stroke and he had diabetes and pneumonia and many different illnesses at the same time. And the doctor suggested he might last maybe a year with those illnesses. But he lasted 10 years. He wasn't speaking. He was very weak. He could hardly use his limbs. He could a little bit, but not much. But he lasted 10 years. Partly through the care. He had received very good care from the monks and doctors. Partly through his own, and probably mostly through his own practice of both samadhi and then insight, letting go of the pain. His understanding was pain is not self, body is not self, pain is not self. So the mind could cope with that level of pain and discomfort, whereas a normal person may have just given up the will to live. You see that all the time in people in that kind of condition. They die quite quickly because it's miserable in a body that is just suffering. But if you have samadhi, maybe you can last longer because you're not attached to the pain and the discomfort, and your samadhi can help you through. Even if you haven't reached that level of practice of Ajahn Chah, you may find when you're peaceful in samadhi, it has a good, very healthy effect on your mind and body. And just as we heal the mind, a lot of our stress fades out when we meditate. And you may manage to let go of some of your stress, your worries, your anguish as you meditate when you're peaceful. Physically as well, you may also find that various illnesses are improved, at least. The healing process improves. So it does have an effect on the body as well as the mind. And in the same way, when we have little samadhi or no samadhi, like when you're really stressed, that also has an effect on your body, but the opposite. When you're stressed, you get chemical changes, hormonal changes, you feel bad, you feel uncomfortable in your body, don't you, when you're stressed? You get aches and pains, you get stomach and digestive problems, you get headaches, get blood pressure problems, your heart beats faster maybe, all kinds of physical effects of stress on your body. Some more short-term, some long-term. So one of the benefits of meditation is it has a very healing effect on you as well as on the mind and on the body as well. Grab Namatsagan Lumpur. And now in English. There is a belief about past lives, present and then next life. What do you think and why are they? How do we prepare ourselves for our own death? I'm sometimes scared. That's normal. Yeah, everyone is scared of death, aren't they? Except for someone who's let go of attachment to their body or the idea of self. If you've seen through the idea of self, then there's nothing to be scared about because there's no one there who's born, who dies. So being afraid of death is a very normal thing, totally normal, don't worry about it, but one of the results of Dhamma practice is you become much more aware of the impermanent, changing nature of body and mind, as well as the world around you. And as you become much more aware of impermanence, it becomes more and more obvious to you that you will die one day. You don't forget that. One of the biggest activities of human beings is we do things to try and forget the fact that we're going to get old and die. Nobody likes that idea. Sometimes I give talks about old age, sickness and death, and I get told off by people. Don't talk about it. Don't talk about it. You talk about death, it'll happen all the quicker, they think. I don't know why they say that, as if words could kill you, but just the idea, people don't like it, do they? You live in a modern city like Melbourne, especially if you're young, you might never have seen a dead person. We don't like to see death, think about it. If someone is dying, they're quickly whisked away in the ambulance to the hospital, and of course you want that because you want them to be cared for and maybe saved, but the average person doesn't see much about death. You see it on TV, of course, movies and whatever, but that's fake. Real death you don't come across very often. And we hide it away. When someone does die, we put them in a coffin. Quite often you don't see inside the coffin. Sometimes you do, it depends on the family and the style of funeral. But everything is sanitized, lots of rules and regulations around death, what you can and can't do. Say like as monks in Thailand, we regularly go to see autopsies where they cut open a dead body and we can go like a medical student and study the inside of a human body, and that's really helpful for meditation. You learn a lot from that. But here you can't do it. All kinds of rules on privacy and what's appropriate, not appropriate. The government and the laws don't allow it. You can't go and see maybe somebody dying in hospital very easily. Sometimes they're, again, privacy or their family or close people say, no, we don't want anyone. We don't put pictures of dead people in the news, on the internet and so on. You can find them if you look for them, but they're rare because we like to hide away death. And that's an expression of our fear, just the idea. Maybe that's not the wisest way to treat death, because if it's something that you know is going to happen to you, and I haven't met the person yet who is not going to die, we all die, better to learn about it, prepare yourself for it, think about it, understand more what is death. And the Buddhist teaching and the Buddhist practice, and my practice seems to back that up, is that what is death? Well, death is the death of the body. Because the body is made up of physical elements we get from nature through food and water. We're born from our mother, we eat food, we drink, we breathe. But eventually these physical elements start to get old, they don't work so well. Like a car or something, things go wrong, eventually you'll die. Nobody goes on forever. But that's the death of the body. And many people believe, well, mind and body are the same thing, so when you die, that's the end of your mind and everything, and finish. But if you meditate, one of the things you become aware of is that mind and body are not exactly the same thing. They're two parts of a human being, but they're not exactly the same. They're linked, but they're not the same. So when the body dies, the mind doesn't die. Even like we were just talking before this about the mind in samadhi, you may enter a deep state of samadhi where your mind and body separate, but you're not dead. And your body is very quiet and still, your mind is aware, bright, knowing, conscious, but as if outside the body or separate from the body temporarily. So you might even call that a bit like temporarily dying. So that's why people who attain samadhi often, regularly, start to lose their fear of death because they realize death is just an affair of the body. But the mind doesn't die. And they even call nibbana the deathless. The mind that isn't born doesn't die. then you understand more, well, where does that birth and death come from? Well, birth comes from attachment. So if we die and our mind is still attached to the body, but of course the body stops working at death, we lose that, the mind wants another body. So you have all this craving and attachment at death for more birth. You could say you haven't had enough of life yet when you die. The average person, the unenlightened person, you want more. Which is strange, because really you're saying, I want more suffering. Because life is full of suffering, isn't it? And yet we're willing to go on looking for more life and therefore more suffering. But that's the effect of attachment on the mind. It brings us to more birth and new life. So that's the Buddhist explanation. And the more you meditate, the more you may come to see that. So the actual fear of death gets less the more you meditate. And instead of fearing death, you fear attachment, because attachment is what causes suffering. Attachment is something you can see and know in this life, right here, right now. Why do we get angry? Because of attachment. Why do we fear, worry? Because of attachment. Why do we get disappointed and frustrated? Because of attachment. You want something and you don't get it, or you've got it and then you lose it. This is all what we call suffering, and it comes from attachment. So rather than fearing death, we should fear attachment. Why are you not peaceful in your mind? It's because of attachment, isn't it? Why do we get upset, sad, depressed? All the kind of suffering we have as human beings comes from attachment. That's a bigger problem than death. So if you get that understanding, then death becomes less of a problem, less of a thing to fear, and attachment becomes the issue. But thinking about death, understanding death more, will help us understand life too. And one thing is that if you remember death, think about death, it makes your life valuable, because you know you're not going to be here forever. So if you remember that you're going to die, and also that you don't know when you'll die, it could be tomorrow, it could be in 50 years from now, it could be any time, we don't know. But we will die. So therefore the time we've got left is precious, because we haven't got a lot of time. The Buddha compared life to like a drop of dew on the grass in the morning. Here people staying in the tents know this. You wake up in the morning, you go out and the grass is wet. Then the sun comes up and the dew disappears. It's very quick. Life is like that. You can all remember when you were kids, but that's a long time ago, and you're now closer to your death. So fast. We're not here for very long. So when you think of death, it makes you value life, and you want to use your time well to learn things, improve things, help yourself, help others, because you're not here forever. You have a short period of time to do more good for yourself. So it gives a sense, we say, urgency, makes it urgent to practice, urgent to do good things. So when you think of death, you don't want to leave something undone. You don't want to leave business unfinished that you should really finish up, because you might lose your chance. So particularly when you've got hatred and anger in your mind, you don't want to leave that there, because maybe you'll die with it still affecting you, another attachment. You want to die free of anger and hatred, so you want to practice forgiveness, letting go, which is what we do on New Year's Eve. We forgive everyone. You could even say New Year's Eve is a little bit like a rehearsal for your death. Practice death. Not that we're going to physically threaten you or do anything that will bring you to death, but mentally it's like leaving the old year behind, 2023, and everything you did, good and bad, in 2023, we're leaving that behind. At midnight we start 2024. It's like a new life, isn't it? A new year, new life. And you'll never get 2023 back again. Never. You can't go backwards in time. You'll never have, your body will never be the same, your thoughts and feelings will never be exactly the same. All the things you own won't be exactly the same in 2024 as they were in 2023. That's something you've got to become aware of. Because a lot of us are living in a delusion, a fantasy of sort of, we delude ourselves that there's this sort of continuity, and that's one of our sufferings. It's another attachment. You want everything to be the same. I wish it could last forever, especially the good stuff. Whenever you have some pleasure, you always want it to last, don't you? But it doesn't. It fades out, it changes. So on the one hand, you could say, well, 2023 was totally unique. Hopefully it was unique in a good way. Many good things happen for you, but unfortunately it's often unique also in a bad way, all kinds of suffering and problems. But it's all finished with, gone. You will never have any experience exactly like you did in 2023. So it's like 2023 has died to you now. And we got 2024, and you've got all your plans and your wishes for 2024, and we wish each other a happy new year, meaning we hope we're successful in whatever we're doing. If you're ill, we hope that you're healthy and recover. If you've got a job, we hope your job goes well. If you have a relationship, may your relationship go well. If you've got kids, may your kids grow well. But that's all just aspiration and wishes for the future. You have to accept the past, 23, is gone. Never be back. So that's almost like birth and death, just at this time you can think of that. There's many ways to look at birth and death, but the Buddha said use it as a way to understand things better. Oh dear, a lot of questions here. Ajahn, I experienced jhana during sitting meditation, but not walking. Should I practice walking anyway? What are its benefits? Does it integrate sitting meditation? Yes, of course it does, because you can't sit forever. I've never met anyone who can sit more than 7 days without moving, which is a long time. Even 7 hours is a long time. I've sat for 7 hours many times, and that took a lot of effort. Most people sit for an hour or two, maybe. So sitting for a long time is hard. So you need another posture to meditate in, so you practice walking. Some people become more peaceful walking than they do sitting. It depends on you and how you get into the walking. But like you say, it's harder to get into a state of stillness when you're walking, because you're physically moving back and forth. So you're not going to enter jhana when you're walking. If you're walking and you feel peaceful, maybe all your mental energy gathers together. We call it the unification of mind. If you're going to go into a deep state of samadhi, you stop walking, don't you? You stand still, maybe close your eyes, and you might enter a state of deep samadhi for a while. I once was looking after Ajahn Mahabua. He was a great meditation master in Thailand. He came to the monastery and he walked up and down on the meditation path. He's teaching me walking meditation, how to do it, and he said, your walking meditation path, you should really have railings or some kind of barrier. So that's why. He said, because if you go into samadhi and you stop and stand still, your mind goes inwards, you close your eyes and you go and you completely lose awareness of your body because you've gone inwards. You're not aware of the world anymore. You're just in a state of one-pointed knowing inside. When you come out of that, it's quite possible you start to fall because you're back with your body again. And it's not unlikely that you may lose your balance. And so if you have a railing there, that will help you not to fall over. I was a bit cheeky. I said, but Lungta, your walking path doesn't have a railing either. He laughed and he said, yeah, my walking path it's on the flat, and if I was to fall, well, it's not very far to fall. So he didn't have one either, but he said I should have one. But it's just pointing to the fact when you go into samadhi in the standing posture, you come out, you can fall, because when you're in samadhi, you lose awareness of your body. But when you're walking, your samadhi is necessarily going to be a little bit coarser, because you're still moving and you're aware and you have to look. If you close your eyes when you're walking, what happens when you bump into things? Not very wise. So you won't go into jhana when you're walking or moving. But what people find, and maybe you found on this retreat, is that when you sit and walk, you can keep your mindfulness practice going for hours and hours, all day if you want, or all night, tonight. If you're struggling tonight, sitting, your legs hurt, sleepy, you go out, you walk for a while, you wake up, cold air, you see the moon, beautiful moon, cool air, wakes you up. You can get rid of your pain in your legs, and you can meditate for another hour or two walking. Then maybe you come back in. So it's a way, the Buddha said, to extend your practice, and the samadhi you get from walking meditation is a very special kind of samadhi. Once you've trained in it, obviously you have to practice, but once you train, your samadhi will last a long time, because you've learned to be mindful and in samadhi when you're moving. So then you go off and do other activities, it goes with you very easily. And what I think many of you have found is when you're sitting, you may get really still, peaceful, but when you finish sitting and you get up and you go out of the hall, it all disappears, doesn't it? And very quickly you're back to kind of normal thinking and talking and looking around, and it's all gone. Whereas walking meditation, you finish walking and maybe you go off to do something else, but you tend to have a lot more mindfulness with you as you change posture. It's a very useful practice to do. And all the great teachers I know, Luang Por Man, Luang Por Cha, Luang Ta Mahabua, and all the other meditation masters from our tradition, they've all done a lot of walking. They don't just sit, they walk as well. Grab Namaskaran Luang Por. During meditation practice, what should we do when drowsy and sleepy? How do we know the difference between the happiness and the beautiful imagination? Well, related to your last question, if you're sleepy, one good thing is to walk. You don't fall asleep so much when you're walking, but you can still fall asleep, especially late at night, so be careful. But generally, walking wakes you up, doesn't it? So walking, Ajahn Chah said, if you're really sleepy and you're walking and then you're sleepy as you're walking, walk backwards. If you walk backwards, you're afraid of falling over, so it keeps you alert, keeps you awake. That's one suggestion. The Buddha said you can do many things when you're sleepy. You can open your eyes. If you're sitting, your eyes are closed and you're sleepy, it's very easy to fall asleep. But if you open your eyes, maybe you look at the Buddha or the light, that will help wake you up perhaps. You can recite Dhamma, chanting or recite some Dhamma you know to yourself, that can wake you up, or chanting. You can go outside and chant loudly, the kangaroos won't mind, they'll just look at you strangely, but they won't mind. You can go out, the Buddha said, go out and wash your face. Go to the toilet, wash your face with cold water. Some people on this retreat have been having showers, 4 a.m, have your shower, wake yourself up. Water wakes us up, refreshes us. Another one they used to use I guess it works. I've never really used it myself, but he said, pull your ears. You pull your earlobes, like say if you have a massage, in Thailand they massage you, they'll pull your earlobes. Because your earlobes have a lot of blood cells in them. So if you pull your earlobes, you kind of stimulate the blood system very quickly. Try it. I associate getting earlobes pulled with being told off by a teacher when I was like 10 years old and they pull your earlobe. I don't like it, but other people might try it. The other one is put something on your head. You get a matchbox or a little something, you sit. So if you start nodding, it drops in your hand, you know you're nodding. Because the whole point is when you start nodding with sleepiness, you don't know because you're asleep. So this is just like an alarm. It goes back anyway. So you can put something on your head, and I know monks who even put water. So they get wet and they don't want to get wet. However, we're also a bit cheeky when we meditate. So the monks who put water on their head, what they found was that because they didn't want to get wet but they were also sleepy, they started kind of working out how they could maintain their posture with their little paper cup of water on their head and still start to sleep. And you'd see them sort of swaying, and the little water thing is still there. And it's a very risky practice, but it works. And you can just have a snooze without losing your water. So that's how sneaky our defilements are. You're just looking to have a sleep. Of course, what we're aiming for is to wake up, not give in to sleepiness, because sleepiness is a defilement. And unless you're exhausted, and sometimes we're exhausted, so then go and have a rest. That's okay. Dear Ajahn, thank you for the teaching. On Uposatha Day at home, do I need to start it with a chant for undertaking the 8 precepts? If so, which chant is it? Well, as you see in our chanting book, which is available online, we have the 8 precepts there. So if you're new to the practice, sometimes it is good to actually say it out loud. You take the 3 refuges, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, and then you recite the 8 precepts, either in Pali or English. But if you've been doing it for a while, you know those precepts. You may just mentally undertake them without actually saying something. That's okay as well, if you're more experienced. Dear Ajahn, I have a few questions about nagas. What is the difference between a naga and a dragon? Is a serpent a family of nagas? If you want to see the difference between a naga and a dragon, go and look at the staircase. They don't look the same, do they? Dragon, different face, naga. And this is an artistic representation of naga and dragon. They both have long, kind of scaly bodies. Every culture will have a different image, won't it? So I'm from Wales. So on the west of England, their national flag has a dragon on it. Green and red dragon of Wales. And the dragons in Wales have wings and feet. They have scaly bodies, but they're a bit fatter than, say, a Chinese dragon, which is long and thin. But then that's the same as people, isn't it? Chinese people don't look the same as Welsh people, unless you're a Chinaman born in Wales or a Welshman born in China. Just as human beings look a bit different, dragons and nagas can look different, but there can be some similarities. Maybe they're in a similar realm. We call the realm the Chatu Maharajika, the lower heaven realm, where you get a lot of these kind of unusual characters from Buddhist cosmology, like dragons and nagas. If you're interested, read up on it. You can Google it, you can read it. There's all kinds of books on Buddhist cosmology, and There's Garudas. We even have an airline called Garuda. It means a sort of eagle-like, deva-like being. So they're all there in the text if you want to find out about them. Other question: why do people worship Nagas and believe Nagas can bring them prosperity, good health, and so forth? This is according to the Buddha's teaching. Good question. People get too attached to Nagas and Devas of all kinds, because people are always looking for something to help them. So some people will turn to a Naga or a dragon, but that doesn't mean to say they don't exist. It just means you have to treat them with right view, don't you? It's like people. You might worship a person. We have gurus and we have people we worship. And sometimes we worship people too much. Even the Buddha didn't encourage people just to worship the Buddha. He encouraged them to go off and practice what the Buddha taught. That's the best kind of worship, is put the teachings into practice. Because worship, when it's a person or a deity or a Naga, tends to become quite kind of self-indulgent, materialistic, doesn't it? I want this, can you give me this? If you give me this, I'll give you that. It's kind of tit for tat, kind of bargaining. But Naga has a number of meanings in Buddhism, so the Naga can mean an arahant. And the Buddha would use this term. The Buddha would sometimes use terms from the language of the time. So Naga can also mean a serpent, but it can also mean an arahant, an enlightened being. It means a great being. So dragons, Nagas also mean great beings, people with a lot of bharami, a lot of good qualities. That's the attractive part. If you meet a Naga with a lot of good qualities, or you believe in Nagas, it's tempting to kind of ask them for things. But maybe just recognize, there are these people who have practiced and they've developed a lot of bharami, wisdom, samadhi, kindness, compassion, sila, all kinds of good qualities. And even the Buddha himself was a Naga in a previous life, he said, Puridatta, he practiced the sila bharami. So he's a fire-breathing Naga who, this kind of travelling showman, caught him because he said, I can make some money out of this guy. So he caught the Naga and put him on show to earn money. This Naga, the Buddha or the Bodhisattva in a previous life, he could have killed the guy because he can breathe fire, which means you just burn someone up if you want. A bit like all the sort of movies where people have superpowers, a bit like that. But he didn't, because he kept sila. He was restrained, he didn't give in to his anger or his indignity, because this guy was abusing him, taking advantage of him. He didn't. He just practiced patience, kept his sila, didn't harm the guy. But then there's other stories of bad Nagas. Like Buddhist monks, we have a rule we're not allowed to drink alcohol. Which is pretty obvious, isn't it? But why we wouldn't drink alcohol. But the origin story of that was that there was a Naga, a bad Naga, a naughty Naga, was terrorizing a village. And he could breathe fire, he'd burn people up, scare them, take away their land, do whatever he could to get them. So the people were living in fear, and the monk came through on arms round and they said, please help us, Bhante, there's this terrible Naga bullying us and scaring us. So the monk went out and he had really good meditation, so he entered his jhana, and the Naga came along and said, who's this guy entering samadhi? And the Naga breathed his fire, but the monk could also produce fire, bigger fire than the Naga. So the Naga is like, oops, mismatched. The monk has more psychic powers, more mental strength than the Naga did, and the monk is pure, he's doing it out of compassion. The Naga is just a bad guy, greedy. So the Naga lost this psychic battle, and then the Naga said, you're a really good monk. And the monk said, I'm a good monk because I have the Buddha as my teacher. And the Naga said, I'm going to become a disciple of yours and the Buddha then. he agreed that this monk was somebody he could look up to. And the monk said, well, the first thing you've got to do is stop terrorizing this village, treat them better than you have been, apologize, be kind to them, help them. And Naga says, yes, that's what I'm going to do. So the monk went back to the village the next morning to collect his rice, and everyone was so happy. Not only did they give him rice, but they gave him rice whiskey. Every house, oh, Bante, you have another cup, we're so happy, the Naga problem is finished. That's how they celebrated in that village. So by the end of his alms round, he was legless, as they say, and he crashed out at the edge of the village, unconscious, drunk, asleep. And of course, who should arrive at that moment but the Buddha and 500 monks. He's lying there. And the monks poke him and said, the Buddha's here, get up. And he's just kind of in his drunken stupor. So instead of getting up, he just turns over and points his feet at the Buddha, which is considered very rude, disrespectful. So the Buddha said, oh, this guy's hopeless. He said, yesterday he could defeat a fire-breathing Naga in a psychic battle, showing an amazing ability with his meditation. Today he couldn't even defeat a worm. It's just a mess. So they pick him up, take him back to the monastery, and we'll have to get him to sober up. And he said, from here on, monks, you cannot drink alcohol, because look, this is what it does to you. So there are the mentions of different kinds of Nagas, good Nagas, bad Nagas. So somebody wants to know why our staircase has the dragon eating the Naga. It's because you're thinking of food, because you've been on retreat with nothing else to think of. Because that dragon is not eating the Naga is being released from the dragon. Because you're so obsessed with food, you think it's about eating. Why, when everyone comes on retreat, does everything come back down to food? So, if you read it, in Thai we say Mangon Kai Nak, which means releasing the Naga. The dragon is releasing it, because the dragon stands for all the good forces in the universe who support the Dhamma practitioners like yourself. The Dhamma practitioner, or the Naga, is practicing for Nibbana and eventually attains Nibbana, and all the good forces in the universe who have supported the Naga, meaning the practitioner. You've been supported, you've had people cooking food for you, providing facilities for you, providing teaching, buildings, everything. You've had all this support. That's like the dragon. You're the Naga, and now you have to go into samadhi and then do your vipassana and get enlightened, and you become the Naga coming out of the mouth of the dragon. So that's actually the meaning of it. It's not the dragon is eating the Naga. Dear Ajahn, in one of my sitting I could see the separation of the mind and the body very clearly. Good. And it happened only one time. Unfortunately that's quite common. You get a good meditation occasionally, and not yet happening in subsequent sitting. How can I maintain that state of mind? Keep practicing. Is it a craving every time I sit and I hope to see it again? Yes, it is. Stop doing that. What do I do after I'm able to see this separation? You contemplate it. You know it, you contemplate it. Reflect on this separation when you've been in your meditation and you see, you have this experience where mind and body seem to come apart. You're looking back at the body with a sense of, we say, dispassion, disenchantment, detachment. That's an unusual state of mind, isn't it? If you're observing your body with this sense of detachment, it's almost like it's not your body. the sense of possessiveness. This is, you no longer feels like your body, it's a body, or set of elements here, but it's not a person, a being, me, mine, myself. It's just something. That's the kind of insight you may have had with dispassion, meaning you're not grasping at it or having a sense of belonging or owning the body. It's just there's a body there, but the mind is now seeing it with equanimity. It's like, there's a body. Doesn't mean to say you hate the body, so it's not that, but you don't love it either. You're just knowing there is a body there, but it's not a self. If you have that often, you repeat it, you get that insight again, well, your whole attitude to the body and then the whole of this world is going to change, isn't it? Because you start being more detached to the world, dispassionate towards the world. It leads to letting go. So sometimes it may be just one part of the body. You're meditating. We once had this lady, I quote her often. She was sitting here, and during her meditation her mind went really still, and then this image of her heart popped up. Beating heart. Just like you might be watching a documentary or something on heart operation. Sees this beating heart very clearly in her mind. But then there was also the sense this is a heart, but it's not my heart, it's just a heart beating. And I'm just this kind of witness knowing the heart beating. She had got a sense of letting go of her body. So it's just a once-off experience, but she said it was really informative, and you don't forget that experience, and it helped her to see a bit more clearly that this body is not a self. It's more like the mind uses the body or takes over the body for a lifetime, and then when we die, mind and body will separate. So that's what I was talking about earlier, dying before you die, where you have the sense of, the body is not really mine. It'd be more correct to say we rent the body than own the body. So there's a difference between a rental property and a property you own, you buy and you own it. If it's rental, there's always that sense belongs to someone else. If you can see the body as not self, as impermanent, not self, it's like you're just temporarily in possession of this body, but it's not really yours. So that changes your whole attitude. A lot of suffering comes from believing this body is yourself. So you get fear, you get love, you get hate, all of that is intensified because of your attachment to your body. If you now see the body as not self, your mind is going to be much more peaceful. Less fears, worries, anxieties. So it's a good thing. Dear Ajahn, I heard you talking about metta, meditation before. I just need to be reassured that I fully understand. Please elaborate it again. Metta means goodwill, kindness, and we develop it on every level. Body, speech and mind, in meditation, in just general attitude towards the world, in our speech, our action. You keep sila, you'll be cultivating metta. Many people have mentioned, they've been quite happy on this retreat because everyone has metta, goodwill between people. So it's not just a meditation, it's also just good social living for harmony, cooperation between people. It's a quality that binds people together, brings people together, helps us to tolerate each other, because it's hard to tolerate people, isn't it? We all have our different habits and characters. But we also develop it most deeply in meditation. So when you're developing we call it one-pointedness of metta. So just metta alone in your mind, not thinking of anything else other than the thought of goodwill. And your mind can be in samadhi when you have that. You're obviously not angry, you're not worried, afraid, you just have this goodwill for yourself and then out to others. So it's very healing Again, New Year's Eve, practice some metta tonight. Forgive everyone. Whatever is lingering in your mind, that guy that you're still angry with. This is the time to forgive, let it go. Whatever it is, or maybe yourself. You're upset with yourself. Maybe you're walking around going, 2023 was a really bad year. I did so many stupid things, and that was wrong, and that was bad, and I'm so depressed. Okay, time to give yourself some metta. Or if it's someone else, they've given you a hard time, hurt you, forgive them so you can move on. 2024, you don't want to start 2024 with any anger in your mind, so you have to forgive and let go. I'm not saying it's easy, sometimes it's hard. But this is a good opportunity to practice that. Dear Ajahn, would you please talk about the practice of the practice of grasping at nothing, resisting nothing, and cutting thoughts off at their root, and when these should be best used. Grasping at nothing, resisting nothing, cutting thoughts off at their root needs lots of mindfulness, lots of samadhi, lots of clarity. Because if you're not going to grasp at anything, you really have to know your mind, don't you? You have to see grasping as it forms, and see that, and know at that moment this is going to be for suffering, so I'm not going to grasp. So the best picture I have in my mind is if you put your finger in fire, you're going to get burnt. So don't put your finger in the fire. If you know that grasping to this thought, this feeling, this sense of self in the body, in the mind, is going to lead to suffering and more birth and more suffering, don't grasp. But it's hard, isn't it? Every other thought comes up and you're already identifying with it, every emotion, happy, sad, angry. We can even attach to kindness with a sense of self. It may be a subtle attachment, but it's still an attachment. So there's plenty to work at, and that's what we're doing in meditation. We're observing where grasping and attachment comes. And we're practicing seeing it through, and grasping always leads to suffering. So as soon as you realize you're grasping, accept whatever you're grasping at is impermanent, not self. The mind of grasping is also impermanent, not self. So you can kind of look at two sides of it. One is the grasping mind, or the other is look at the object of the grasping. So if you look at the object, so say going back to food, seeing as everyone likes to think about food, you think about the food and it starts to obsess your mind, you're grasping, you're holding on. Well, think about the disadvantages of food or the drawbacks of food. Food doesn't last very long. Food, once eaten, becomes unpleasant because it goes in your stomach. Food requires a lot of effort to obtain. At the very least, you have to go and earn money and go and buy it. All kinds of aspects of food which you forget when you're just stuck on the pleasure of food. But now you use wise reflection to see, food actually has all this other side to it. And maybe some of that grasping fades out then, and you see food, it's a useful thing, keeps your body healthy, but it's just that much. It's just fuel for your body. And some of the obsession or the endless thinking about it, desiring it, will fade when you see it clearly for what it is. So you look at the food itself and teach yourself to let go of the obsession or the grasping at it. Or you can just look at the mind endlessly stirred up by food in this case. That mind is not peaceful, is it? When you're obsessed with something, you're not peaceful, you're not free. It's like you're in debt. You have to keep thinking about that thing you're obsessed with. So if you can see that, then you may tire of that suffering. Don't want to think anymore. Let it go. When you're ready, when the mindfulness and the wisdom is ready, you let the things you grasp at go. And you can go back to emptiness, peace of mind. So you just have to keep investigating whatever it is, whether it's food, anything else, pleasant, unpleasant, we attach to everything. So there's a lot to do, but if you practice mindfulness, then you're ready for whatever grasping arises. I'm answering very quickly here because just trying to get through all the questions. Can you please explain whether vipassana is essentially contemplation of impermanence of all things and happenings? What quality does a sotapanna person have? Wish you all the best in your practice and strength to continue seeing. Can't see what that says. Anyway, wish you all the best. So vipassana is clear seeing with mindfulness and focusing on one or all of the three characteristics of existence. They call them the universal characteristics, tilaksana, impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, not self, anicca, dukkha, anatta. That can be physical phenomena or mental phenomena. So, obvious one, your body, keep seeing your body as impermanent. It's not a fixed thing that's always the same. It's constantly changing. And that brings us a lot of dukkha. And you can't stop it changing, you can't stop it getting old, you can't stop it one day it's going to die. It's not self. Because if it was self, you could say, don't get old, don't get sick, don't die. So it can be physical things or it can be mental things. Your mindfulness is there and you see a thought arise, pass away, feelings, pleasure, displeasure, memories, sight, sound, taste, smell, touch. They're all arising and passing away. So you're focusing on the impermanence or even the lack of self in that. It could be seeing, when you're seeing, you're just seeing. But this takes a lot of practice, obviously. Just seeing without a sense of I am seeing. It's just seeing, it's just I seeing. That's how an arahant sees. No sense of I. The mind that creates an I, a person, a self, isn't happening anymore for the arahant. But we see and we get lost straight away. I am seeing, I like what I see, this is good, this is bad, I don't like this. We get an endless mental proliferation because we're not fully mindful or insightful of the three characteristics. So Sotapanna, well they say Sotapanna, stream enterer, has unshakable faith in Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. They no longer doubt about that, no longer doubt about the path of practice, Noble Eightfold Path. They know it works, they know it will get them to Nibbana, because they've had a glimpse of Nibbana. So it's like, they know Nibbana is there for them to attain, to reach. No more doubt about that. No more doubt about the Buddha was an enlightened, wise teacher. No more doubt about the teachings he gave. No more doubt about the enlightened Sangha, meaning anyone can practice this, anyone can also become enlightened. I can, you can. No more doubts, because this is a huge obstacle. We're all doubting ourselves. Because I hear this every day. Oh, Ajahn, I got no barami, may me bun. We have all these kind of thoughts where we feel we can't practice. So you have to overcome those doubts. Sotapanna has 5 precepts. They don't kill, steal, commit acts of sexual misconduct, they don't lie, they don't get drunk. Sotapanna has very good mindfulness and they practice vipassana, so they may still have defilements arise, greed and anger arise, but very quickly they let go. They don't hold on to greed or anger anymore and they don't hold on to grudges. So if someone's still got a grudge, they're not a Sotapanna. That's one of the reflections you can look at in your own mind. Have I still got any grudges against anyone? If you have, you're not a Sotapanna. A Sotapanna doesn't have them. But you may still have greed, anger, but when it arises, you quickly see it and let it go. Dear Ajahn, thank you very much for all the teachings. My question is related to yesterday's lunch Dhamma. How could one have samadhi become reborn as an animal? Oh, you can have samadhi but no sila. You can use your samadhi in the wrong way. People can train in samadhi, but they still have some pretty nasty thoughts or coarse thoughts. Maybe they're doing it to get rich, to impress their friends, to kill. You can use samadhi to kill. You train in samadhi so that you shoot your gun really well and you kill. So you may have samadhi, but then you make the karma of killing, you may be reborn in a lower realm. So samadhi alone is not the whole path, it's part of the path, but we practice the Eightfold Path, right view, sila, samadhi, panya, right action, right speech. All these different aspects work together so you can still have samadhi and still make mistakes and hurt yourself, hurt others, until right view is established. That's an aspect of wisdom. Even the Buddha in past lives, he would have had samadhi, but sometimes he's reborn as an animal. There must have been some karma to be reborn as an animal, but he still has many good qualities in him. Even a bodhisattva can be an animal. Dear Ajahn, the Buddha can see things in the future for thousands and thousands of years. How do you know? I mean, I agree, you probably can, but I don't know how you know. And many monks in Thailand can do that too, can they? Can you explain how did that happen? Well, there is one special knowledge, they call it Anagata Jnana. Jnana means special knowledge, psychic knowledge from meditation, from jhana. Anagata means future. So just as some people with well-developed minds in samadhi can recollect past lives, some people can have knowledge of the future. A word of caution, any kind of what you might call special knowledge, whether it's nimittas, visions, all this kind of thing, premonitions, you have to treat it carefully because it's still subject to impermanence. It's still sabbe sankhara anicca. So you may have an image of something, you may have had images before, or dreams, or a premonition, or an image arise, and before it came true, so you believe everything that arises in your mind now, because in the past you had something that seemed to come true, but then one day it won't come true maybe, and you'll be caught out. So be careful, you have to treat it with caution. Maybe this will be true, maybe, but maybe not. Ajahn Chah used to say with things like this, give it 99%, but keep 1% left for impermanence, anicca. Maybe it will happen, maybe it will be true, but maybe not. Because the world is a very unpredictable place. So to really know the future with accuracy, it's going to be quite a rare thing, I think. Nevertheless, it's one kind of knowledge that sometimes people have. He knew one teacher in southern Thailand, Lumpur Nuon, and his mother was a nun with him, and he had really good samadhi, all kinds of psychic powers, very good monk, wise monk. His mother learnt meditation, she also had good samadhi, and she knew every day who was coming to offer dana. There's no phone, no internet, but she'd know, and she'd tell him, oh, this person's coming today, that person's coming today. It's quite useful, isn't it? Because if you're monks and nuns dependent on dana, you need to know who's coming, otherwise you might starve. So that was a useful knowledge. But she could predict who's coming. She already knew, because she knew, I guess, from their train of mind, they make their plan, their thoughts, she could pick up on that. So one day we went to visit, some of us monks went to visit, she already knew we were coming and told him who was coming before we arrived. So almost daily she was proven correct. So maybe once or twice you say, oh, it's just a fluke, but if it's every day, then it's like, she really knows. Or like this hall we're sitting in, 22 years ago or 21 years ago, we had a permit to build it over the hill on the land over there, near where you walk today in the meditation. We had a permit from the council to do that, but before we built it, we were thinking, well, it's going to be difficult to build over there, there's a lot of trees, and we hadn't bought this property that this building is now sitting on yet, but Lumpur Plian, who is famous for having Kalyano, and both knowing the future and the past. And he said, oh, do you know you're not going to build your hall where you think you're going to build it? He said, you're going to build it near water. So what's out the back here? And we've got a big pond. So he gave us that prediction. Well, that's all he said, but in the end it turned out to be true. We didn't build this building back there, we built it over here. It's not because he said that, but it turned out what he said was correct. Maybe slightly better than that, he was here the night that the council voted on our permit to build the monastery to get as a place of worship. And there was a little bit of, there's one neighbour wasn't happy to have a Buddhist monastery here, so he kicked up a lot of fuss, made a bit of trouble, tried to convince the council not to give us a permit. And they had to vote, and there's 9 councillors. So, knowing Lumpur and his great samadhi and great knowledge, I said, what do you reckon, Lumpur? Are they going to vote for us? And he said, yep, they will, but it won't be unanimous, it'll be 8-1. And that night they voted, and yes, it was 8-1. How could he know that beforehand? He didn't know any of the councillors, who they were, but he knew the number. So certainly short-term predictions, premonitions are often pretty accurate for meditators if they have them. These 1,000-year ones, well, we're never going to be able to prove it, we're all going to be dead. So, possibly true, but less useful, I guess. You can do it in a worldly way as well. I knew one lady, her meditation was really good, and she could predict all kinds of things that were coming up, and she was ill in the hospital, went to visit her, and all the monks went to visit her because she was a relative of one of the monks at Ajahn Kalyan's monastery. And while we were visiting her, the World Cup was on the TV, so half of the monks kept looking at the TV because you don't see the World Cup normally in a monastery, so you're tempted to look. And the game being played, the favourites for the World Cup were playing someone else. I can't even remember which teams, but I just remember it was the favourites, and it was like probably the semi-final, not the final. And the favourites were losing. So a few monks were kind of talking. We were talking with the lady in the hospital over here, and the few monks over there going, what's going to happen? The favourites, they're losing. This is disaster. So we're over here, and she heard what they're saying. She said, don't worry, they're going to score 2 more goals. I said, oh, okay. Which kind of made everyone curious. Let's wait and see. So it was in the second half, so we had about half an hour to go. And sure enough, the favourite scored 2 more goals and won the match. She'd be rich if she'd gone into gambling, but she didn't. So, there's a lot of people want people to have this knowledge of the future. Certainly in Thailand, they're always asking monks what lottery number will come up this time. So we have a rule, we're not supposed to give out lottery numbers. But people want you to, because they think you know everything that's going to happen. Of course, you don't know everything's going to happen. Or even if you did give the lottery number, Ajahn Chah said, even if you give it, that person may not have the merit, the good karma to win anyway. So you might give them a correct lottery number, but something goes wrong, they don't win. And this is that side of the whole psychic power thing, isn't it? You start looking at it in a more worldly way. I just want to make my money, so can you tell me something that will help me make my money, or sell my land, or get the job, or they come and ask you all kinds of things. Ajahn, is this the right girl for me? I don't know. Do you love her? It's not a job for monks to predict everything. You've got to take some responsibility of your own life. So it's not a trivial thing, but these psychic powers do arise, yes. Next question. Can you explain about the last birth? Can we control that? The last birth? It's already happened. Is that what you mean, last birth? It's already happened, you can't control it. If you mean next birth, well, the best way to prepare for the end of your life is practice what we're doing, sila, samadhi, panya. Purify your mind, let go of greed, anger and delusion as much as you can, make your mind as strong and firm in mindfulness as you can. If you keep precepts, you won't have any regrets. If you practice generosity, you have lots of good memories and a very kind, happy mind. If you develop meditation, develop vipassana, then even as you're facing your death, you can let go of all the worries and the pain and all the things that might disturb you. And that's the best preparation for the end of your life. What exactly will happen next? Well, we'll have to find out, won't we? Last question. Can you tell us the story about Ajahn Chah? Can you understand each other when he was teaching you meditation? Because Ajahn Chah speak that and you speak English, or speak Thai and you speak English. Well, one reason I learnt Thai was because I wanted to know what Ajahn Chah's teachings were, so I very quickly learnt Thai when I was in Thailand. Ajahn Chah himself said when you listen to a talk, you listen on two levels, on the level of the intellect, so language, the words, the meaning of the words, but you also listen with your heart. And even if you don't understand someone's language, you'll be picking things up from that talk on the level of the heart. So maybe the peace, the mood, the peace of the one giving the talk. So Ajahn Chah had a very strong mind, very powerful samadhi, and was very wise and very compassionate. So many people picked up on that even when they didn't speak Thai. Or later in his life when he didn't speak at all, but he would come out and meet people, we'd push him out in his wheelchair, and people would come and sit like this next to Ajahn Chah, and they would meditate and chant and sit there. And many people had insights just sitting with Ajahn Chah, even though they weren't hearing his words. So it's possible. So that's on the more emotional level, or the level of the citta. You pick up stuff from a teacher on that level, and then on the level of the words as well, of course, more like just a normal exchange of information. When you're learning a language, say like I was learning Thai, listening I couldn't listen to Ajahn Chah's Dhamma talks because when I got there he stopped talking, but I could hear the tapes. So I'd listen to a tape, or I'd listen to another teacher speaking in Thai. You pick out individual words, and sometimes that's a good way to practice Dhamma because you focus on individual words that you have learned, like sati, or samadhi, or kanti, or ton, or whatever the word. You learn it in Thai and then you pick it out in a talk, so you really think of that word. Obviously you miss a lot in between, but you do get some Dhamma and you really focus on that Dhamma, and then that inspires you to want to know the other words, and you start filling in the blanks, almost like a kind of game, until you can understand whole sentences and the whole talk. So most of the monks who learnt Thai, they found it was a very good experience to learn Thai, because then you got the Dhamma from the teacher. And Thai is a very good language to speak Dhamma in, because it comes from Pali, Sanskrit origin, and there's a lot of Dhamma in the Thai culture and the Thai language anyway. So most monks found it very useful for them to learn Thai, and gives you another angle on the Dhamma. English is quite good for learning Dhamma as well, so you compare the translations of Pali words both in Thai and English, and you get kind of the best of both worlds. So I found translating Ajahn Chah was a really useful experience. I translated quite a lot of his books in my early years, and later I translated for Ajahn Anan, which was also useful. One problem when you're translating is sometimes you hear a good Dhamma talk and you're meditating, listening and preparing to translate, and in my day we used to do it by memory. We just remember the words and then give it back to the people listening rather than writing it down. You're remembering the words, and sometimes they're so good you go into samadhi. You go into samadhi, you stop listening to the words, you're now gone inside, you don't hear anymore. So on a number of occasions I went into samadhi and I couldn't translate, which was a bit embarrassing. But luckily Ajahn Anan realised that, and he said, "Oh, Kalyano's gone into samadhi." And I would just say, "Oh, sorry Ajahn, can you say that again?" But it was actually a good result, because that's what Dhamma can do. You listen to a talk, puts you in samadhi. What more can you want? Your mind goes really peaceful. And sometimes Ajahn Chah's talks are like that. Occasionally from reading a book, but more from listening to the spoken word from Ajahn Chah, like on YouTube or just a recording. Start listening to Ajahn Chah and straight away the mind goes into samadhi, because you have so much faith, respect for the teacher, hearing the words, and his voice is so cool. It's coming from a mind of emptiness, no self, no attachment. When you hear his words, straight away the mind goes into samadhi. So you could call that the shortcut to samadhi. You hear the teacher and you don't have to do the 6-day retreat struggling. You just go straight into samadhi. Okay. Can't complain. It obviously won't happen every time, but sometimes it does. So it's very nice. Same with other teachers, Ajahn Mahabua, other teachers. Sometimes you just see them, meet them, or you listen to the talk, even a recording, and your mind just quickly calms down, because their Dhamma is so powerful, so meaningful, such a good atmosphere, good energy, that you quickly calm down. And you can understand how in the time of the Buddha would start giving a talk and someone might get enlightened. You can see how that can happen. They have enough, their mind is prepared enough, they've done enough 6-day retreats, they've done enough practice. When they hear the Buddha talk, everything comes together and all the defilements just disappear. They're ready for it. It may not happen very often, but it can happen like that. So, that's finally all the questions answered. You're probably a bit restless, so we'll take a break now. We'll just bow to Buddha Dhamma Sangha, and then you're welcome to have some refreshment downstairs. Stretch your legs, or if you want to carry on sitting, you can. And it's just after 9:30 now, so at 11:30 we'll be doing Parita chanting later. So it's in 2 hours. So it's up to you how you spend your time, whether you're here, refreshment, walking. If you'd like to come back at around 11:30 for the next round of chanting, you're welcome. So we'll just pay respects to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha.